And welcome everybody. We are at a 3:00 p.m. start for our webinar. I hope everybody is ready to get started. Thank you so much for attending today. My name is Sarah Donnelly, and I am the Director of Jazz at South Arts in Atlanta. We are about to begin a new webinar for Jazz Road and are really happy that you've joined us. We plan to go until 4:00 p.m. today, Eastern, with a dedicated 15 minutes for questions and answers at the end. If you have basic questions throughout the session, you are welcome to type them into the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, and we will try to answer them in live time or get to them later. The webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be posted online at the Jazz Road website, as well as various South Arts social media outlets. And if you did not type your email address in when joining the webinar, please do so by typing it in to the Q&A section if you would like to be included in the Jazz Road mailing list to receive updates. So my intention today is to provide a brief overview of Jazz Road and the Jazz Road Tours grant program, including guidelines and application tips to help applicants prepare for the first deadline on August 1st. Though the webinar is geared toward artists, interested presenters should also find this helpful. So our agenda today is as follows. I'd like to introduce you to some of my colleagues. Then we will dive into a brief overview of Jazz Road and how we've arrived at Jazz Road Tours, followed by a more in-depth exploration of the Jazz Road Tours guidelines and application process, and then wrap up with Q&A. So as I said earlier, my name is Sarah Donnelly. I am the Director of Jazz at South Arts in Atlanta, and I oversee Jazz Road as a national program and also serve as the Jazz Road liaison for South Arts, and that is me there. I'll tell you more about South Arts in a second, but for now, I'd like to introduce the Deputy Director of Programs. That is Molly Quinlan Hayes, who is joining us today. Molly, would you like to say any words before we get started?
Thank you, Sarah. Very briefly, I'd like to welcome you all on behalf of our Executive Director, Susie Circumer, our staff team, and our board. We are very excited about the interest around the Jazz Road program. South Arts is particularly excited to be leading this, which is the first national collaboration between all 6 of the regional arts organizations who are also on with us today, which allows us to have full national reach for this program, including every state, territory, and the District of Columbia. South Arts is committed to helping artists survive and thrive. This program helps us to deliver on that commitment. And again, we're very pleased you've tuned in today. Sarah?
Thank you, Molly. And I also would like you to meet Ivan Shustak, the Communications and Development Director at South Arts. He is my tech guru who is running everything smoothly for this session, but email him if you have any complications. So moving to Jazz Road, what is it? It is a new national artist-centric initiative. It was announced last fall, and it is, as Molly just said, led by South Arts in partnership with the 5 other regional arts organizations. Most importantly, it is funded by Doris Charitable Foundation, with additional support from the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation. So before I describe the actual program, I do want to clarify what a regional arts organization is and what the role of my colleagues play in Jazz Road. There are 6 regional nonprofit arts service organizations throughout the U.S., which partner with the National Endowment for the Arts and state arts agencies to support artists, arts organizations, and communities with a number of different programs. I've listed all 6 of them here: South Arts, Arts Midwest, Mid-America Arts Alliance, Mid-Atlantic Arts Foundation, New England Foundation for the Arts, and for our purposes today, a partnership between 2 organizations representing the West. That would be Western Arts Alliance and West Staff. If we had more time, I would go into much detail about the structure and programs offered at all of the regional arts organizations, but today we are only focusing on Jazz Road. South Arts partners with its regional arts organization colleagues to spread the goals of Jazz Road throughout the US and to make sure that applicants from each region have representative Jazz Road liaisons to connect with for technical assistance on their applications. So I'd now like to introduce each of the Jazz Road regional liaisons and have them say hello or add any comments. And this is because when the state you reside in is within a particular region, you will contact this person with your basic questions. So beginning with Arts Midwest, I won't repeat all of the states, you see them here, but I'd like you to meet Luke Rivard. And Luke, if you could say a couple of words.
Hello, everybody. My name is Luke. With Arts Midwest, we have 9 partner states. In addition to working on Jazz Road, I also work with a bunch of different international projects that we have at Arts Midwest, and it's a lot of fun. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions if you reside in this region.
Thank you, Luke. Moving to Mid-America Arts Alliance, I think Christine Bile is on the phone call, please.
Hi, this is Christine Bile. I am the Director of Grant Programs for Mid-America Arts Alliance located in Kansas City, Missouri. And as you can see on the screen, we offer services to artists and arts organizations across 6 states in the southern Midwest area. Feel free to reach out to me if you've got questions or concerns. Thanks.
Thanks, Christine. And from Mid-Atlantic Arts Foundation is Jess Porter with us.
Hello there, this is Jess. As Sarah mentioned, I'm with Mid-Atlantic Arts Foundation, program officer here. I manage our portfolio of other jazz programs, including the Jazz Touring Network, which is a presenter-based program, as well as the Living Legacy Award. Also oversee our folk and traditional arts programs. The listing of states and jurisdictions in our region is on your screen, so feel free to call me if you have questions.
That's great. Thanks, Jess. And from New England Foundation for the Arts, I'd like you to meet Daniela Jacobson.
Hi, everyone. I'm Daniela Jacobson. I'm the program manager for the New England Presenting and Touring programs. I'm also an accessibility coordinator at the New England Foundation for the Arts, also known as NEFA. I help manage NEFA's regional touring programs, which fund public presentations of artists throughout the 6 New England states. I'm really looking forward to connecting with jazz artists from New England who may be interested in Jazz Road grant opportunities, and please feel free to contact me if you have any questions.
Thank you, Daniela. And last but not least, we have Western Arts Alliance. Normally, I would introduce you to Tim Wilson, but he is not here today, and so his colleague Joyce M. is standing in. Joyce?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Joyce. I'm the admin person for Western Arts Alliance. I'm really happy and excited to be here and to be supporting Jazz Road and jazz artists in the West. So feel free to reach out to that email address, twilson@westarts.org, or you can reach out to me, admin assistant at westarts.org.
Thank you, Joyce. And again, I am at South Arts. We serve the following states from Alabama to Tennessee. And for the purposes of this program, I also will be answering questions for anyone from various U.S. territories. You saw that Jess has U.S. Virgin Islands, and I will be working with people from Puerto Rico and beyond. So please call me if you would like. Each of my colleagues introduced here is available to help you navigate the basics of your Jazz Road application. They may be able to help you learn more about types of jazz presenters and their locations within particular states and/or regions. or perhaps what various touring dynamics may be obvious in a state or region. Presenters from each region can also contact their regional arts organization to connect with the Jazz Road program. And we've started that through responding to the call for presenters, which I will go into some detail about in a minute. One disclaimer is that we are just building this data, and it's a beginning effort and a work in progress. So most importantly, we do assume that each applicant is initiating tour planning and research, and the tools we are beginning to provide serve as potential supplemental suggestions. On to Jazz Road history quickly. How have we gotten to this place? Well, in 2017, while the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation considered ways to develop a national initiative for jazz, South Arts was simultaneously looking at efforts to emphasize jazz in the South, essentially the original birthplace for jazz, and was approached to lead a program involving all the regional arts organizations. Planning meetings to develop Jazz Road took place throughout 2018, and by the end of the year, through Doris Duke and additional support from Andrew Mellon, South Arts announced Jazz Road in partnership with all of the RAOs, which is short for regional arts organizations, and we hosted 6 regional convenings. Some of you on the call may have attended them, and we welcome you again. And at those convenings, we worked hard to solidify a program design. So what we resulted in was that 3 areas of support will come out of Jazz Road, and 2 will be grant programs. That would be Jazz Road Tours, Jazz Road Creative Residencies, and then we will also develop a data platform, which we are calling Jazz Road Assets. And as I said, this is a continuing work in progress, and we are in its very early phases. Today is definitely about Jazz Road Tours, and the first deadline is August 1st for tours between October and September of 2020. And just to let you know, Jazz Road Creative Residencies will open in the fall of 2019. So we do have a website. I'm hoping that most of you have seen it. Please review it at that domain. When you do open the website for Jazz Road Tours, it is crucial that you review the sections that I've listed here. So please navigate it slowly and carefully. Take your time to look at tours, call for presenters, and within tours, review the overview, guidelines, and application tabs. I am now showing you a screenshot of what that homepage looks like. So you see up at top on the right, we have About, Tours, Creative Residencies, a separate tab for the call for presenters, and then these 3 subheads are very crucial to be making sure that you've read each section. I hope everyone can see that well. So some words about what Jazz Road Tours is about. It was announced at the end of April, which was very recent. And it is an artist-centric touring program to award funds to US-based jazz artists that define themselves along a career level spectrum from emerging to more established. A program to increase jazz artists' abilities to book and promote their own tours while being adequately compensated. We want to spread jazz throughout the country, including areas and communities with limited recent exposure to live jazz performance. And we wish to bolster deeper engagement between jazz musicians, presenters, and communities, and connect jazz artists with new listeners in new places. Jazz Road Tours grant outcomes will also honor and perpetuate several distinctions that have resonated for the funders, South Arts, the field, and within convenings. This would be an appreciation that jazz is a music tradition rooted in the African American experience, and that diversity, inclusion, and equity will be primary lenses for all deliberations and considerations. So here is our first Jazz Road Tours timeline. As noted before, the first deadline is August 1. We hope to notify you of your application or grant status in September, and the grant period does begin in October through September 2020. We will have additional deadlines for Jazz Road Tours, and they will take place all the way through June 2022. We hope to support approximately 50 tours annually with grants of up to $15,000, which means that this will be a highly competitive program. So moving to the Jazz Road Tours overview, it is designed to give grants directly to emerging and mid-career artists to create small, contiguous 3 to 6 site tours at an array of venue types, often in rural communities and other areas which are traditionally underserved by jazz. This means that of the 3 to 6 sites, the most competitive applications will show a range of types of presenters and locations addressing the program criteria. Award amounts, again, generally will range from $5,000 to $15,000, most of which will be matched one-to-one by the collective tour presenters. I will further explain this point in a minute. And just to reiterate, for individual artists, the grant funds are taxable. So more on eligibility specific to the applicants. Again, applicants must be emerging or mid-career professional jazz musicians. They should be based in the US with US citizenship or permanent resident status. They can be solo performers or part of an ensemble of 2 to 10 musicians. And they should be seeking grant support for artist fees, travel, accommodations, meals and per diem, and administrative support for tour, promotion, and coordination. So as we review certain sections, I will offer some immediate subtext that you will find in the guidelines, but I just want to emphasize these points here, and I will also repeat some information. One thing to make clear, and a question that comes up often, is that we are not defining what jazz is. The panel will recognize what is excellent within the total historic and current aesthetic of the genre. We also are allowing the artist applicant to define where they are in their career and artistic development. So by using words such as emerging, mid-career, more established, we are wanting to support a career spectrum. And what is clear is that we are not supporting artists that are immediately recognizable as legends, masters, highly popular, highly commercial, and for which a small touring grant has low or debatable impact. So that was the eligibility around applicants, but we also want to talk about the tours a little bit. Applicants must be organizing tours at eligible venues. That can include nonprofit and commercial established jazz presenters, festivals and clubs, universities, colleges, and institutions of higher education. But we also want to be very open to non-traditional and alternative venues to supplement the tours. And examples of those types of organizations are very much listed in the guidelines, but that would include radio station, live segments, artist spaces, community centers, churches, synagogues, mosques, and other places of worship, galleries, listening rooms and libraries, house concerts, open air markets, retail and civic events, etc. So we are trying to bring jazz to a lot of places. And applicants must also be planning a tour on contiguous dates spanning 3 to 6 different sites, at least one of which must be 250 miles from the applicant's home base. And then finally, you are planning a tour between, again, the same timeline, October 1 through September 30th of 2020. The intention is that an artist is able to tour across larger states, across state lines, throughout a region, but it is unlikely that funds will be available for cross-country touring. So application requirements. You will be applying online through a system called GoSmart, and the actual structure of the application will have several segments to include application narrative, biographies, artist website and social media links, tour summary, letters of intent, a tour budget summary, and work samples. We have streamlined the number of components necessary to apply intentionally, and we do want to draw your attention to the letters of intent requirement between artists and presenters, and also urge you to refer to the frequently asked questions section and its updates. And we are also working on application flow charts, which will also be visible within this platform shortly. So before we go through the technicalities and the guidelines and application process, I did want to emphasize the features that will make an application most competitive beyond addressing the artistic quality. And those would be connected to the merit of the tour. Tours that represent new opportunities for the applicant, tours that supplement traditional jazz engagements with dates and activities through alternative spaces and ways of programming the music, and tours that will include non-traditional jazz venues along with anchor presenters and venues that are based in rural, remote, and underserved communities. Because we emphasize seeking performance opportunities through a combination of well-known jazz presenters and less experienced alternative venues, especially those that are located in remote areas, we are wanting to be responsive to applicants that need help finding this information. So this brings us to the call for presenters and the role of your RAO liaisons. Again, we are hopeful that applicants have spent a good deal of time already over their lifespans thinking about communities and venues that they want to tour to. And we hope that they have some of their own contacts already in place, but some may not. And because of that, they won't be familiar with enough presenters in a region or enough to build a tour, or they won't be familiar with non-traditional types of venues or rural or underserved areas. So we've begun, as I said, to collect information through a call for presenters. And it is just a beginning tool for applicants. It definitely should not be perceived as a primary vehicle to establish contacts. And it is not achieving critical mass at this time yet. It's a work in progress. The list is an opt-in response from interested presenters. And so it is not evaluated or endorsed by Jazz Road per se, but it does give applicants some starting places for various locations. And we do hope to develop a robust data source in rounds to come. So again, applicants can contact their RAO liaisons for additional suggestions, but at no time is a RAO responsible for making venue recommendations for you. We do urge applicants to do their own research, consult their peer network, and refer to organizations such as All About Jazz, Jazz Near You, presenter networks and consortia, alternative venue chat groups on social media, and jazz publications that specialize in offering listings and resources of various types of jazz presenters. We urge you to look at the Call for Presenters tab, though, and we would like you to send it to presenters so that we can continue to get the word out about Jazz Road. So moving to the Guidelines tab, as you open it, you learn immediately about how the grant is structured around 2 areas of support. And I want to acknowledge that as far as we know, Jazz Road Tours is a unique and new program design, placing artists in the driver's seat with greater mobility to achieve tour goals. But that said, we recognize that the following may be somewhat confusing. First, artists may request support for eligible expenses related to the jazz tour: artist fees, travel, housing, and meals for each engagement, to a maximum request of $12,500. This amount requires a 1-to-1 match by the collective tour presenters. For instance, if an artist is applying for 4 dates with a total request of $10,000, there is an expectation that some combination of the tour venues will be matching that $10,000 with their expenses. Point 2, the second area of support is a request of up to $2,500 that is earmarked for the artist's administrative costs for the time and/or services connected to tour promotion and coordination. This amount does not need to be matched at all. So this means that with both of these maximum amounts, an artist can be requesting no more than $15,000. And we do anticipate that the larger grant amounts will go to tours involving either larger ensembles or 6 dates. Pausing for a minute for you to take some of this text in. Here are more requirements for the collaboration between the artist and the presenter. All presenters must pay artists and/or provide in-kind contributions toward eligible and other expenses. Anchor presenters, which we consider to be traditional presenters which consistently program jazz and schedule further in advance, we generally expect that they will pay total artist fees or a high percentage of directly, but we anticipate that smaller and less experienced venues may only have the capacity to cover other expenses with cash or in-kind. So artists will work with presenters to establish equitable artist fees, and the grant amount serves basically as an artist's wallet to make up the difference. Each venue listed on the tour must demonstrate their commitment to the engagement by co-signing a letter of intent, which is a form provided by Jazz Road. And again, all of this is very clear in the guidelines. Since we've asked you to pay close attention to the letter of intent and its instructions, this is a form provided through an obvious link on the website that you will download to complete and then upload to your application. So you will use Adobe Acrobat to complete it for each venue. We do recognize that many of the amounts and the timing requested may be estimates and change prior to the engagement. And we want to relieve you to know that several sections use automatic calculations and include notes to make this fairly self-explanatory and clarify exactly what we are meaning by presenter match amounts. So let's take a look at the letter of intent instructions, and I'm going to abbreviate this and call it LOI. There's a lot of information here. I just want you to see the structure of it. It's very clear through these instructions what you need to do and what each section means, what we're trying to get at, and how to calculate the figures. And then let's take a second looking at the actual 2-page letter of intent form. As you see, there are several sections to describe the engagement and some calculations, and then ultimately a co-signature. So some of the basics around this, I don't want to get too specific because there is a lot, but basically the LOI allows the artist to state eligible expenses and the presenter to state what portion of those expenses it will pay, either financially or as an in-kind contribution. Additionally, the presenter can list amounts it will pay toward its own cost around promotion and marketing, equipment, backline, and direct event staffing and operations, which is all to go toward presenter match. And then another section, which is in section 2, allows for the artist and presenter to list any community engagement or audience development activities that you have agreed to, if applicable. So in section 1, the artist fee, the artist applicant will enter the full amount that he or she would expect to be paid for this engagement, even if that full amount is not being paid by the presenter. And also will enter the appropriate expenses for travel and hotel and per diem. The total artist expense will calculate the sum automatically. Moving on to sections 3 and 4, you see that this is where the presenter enters the amount it anticipates to contribute toward artist fee or hotel or travel, whether the expense is financial or an in-kind value. And again, these amounts will be considered part of the presenter match. So we've really tried to make this very clear and easy. I'd like to add that the reason there is no project budget section to the application is because all of the information is right here. We don't want you to have to do a separate project budget. And later in the application's total budget summary, the applicant will be required to pull totals from these forms. And we've provided auto calculations and help fields to make it very clear. I know that I've said this already, but I'm going to repeat myself just to make it very clear. The total maximum request of up to $12,500 is required to be matched 1-to-1 by the presenters on the tour, the collective presenters. And these amounts are pulled from the LOI. An additional request of up to $2,500 for admin toward tour coordination and promotion is available, and it does not require a match. So moving to application review, the applications will be reviewed by panels comprised of experts in the jazz field from across the US. The criteria is weighted evenly between artistic excellence and merit of the proposed tour. The artistic quality will be evaluated through information gathered from the artist's biography and also, most importantly, the quality of the work samples. The merit of the tour will be determined by how you answer your questions in the project narrative. And we're about to turn to that, so you'll see what that looks like. But the merit of the tour will be demonstrated by the applicant's readiness to tour, the impact of the tour on the artist's professional and/or artistic development at the time, the quality and clarity of artist and presenter planning, the diversity of organizations involved in the tour, what are their type, what size, what are the geographic areas, the tour's ability to engage new listeners in underserved, isolated, or rural areas in collaboration with presenters newer to jazz programming, the quality and clarity of the tour coordination and routing, and the quality and clarity of your plan to use admin support toward your efforts at promoting and coordinating your tour, if applicable. So we're actually moving to the last tab, not of the presentation, but of the web portal for applications. Again, we are using the portal GoSmart at southarts.gosmart.org. And that portal is where you will do the following. You will create a profile and log in. You will begin, save, and resume an application. You will upload a letter of intent and work samples. And finally, you will submit your application. And if funded, this is where you will also manage your award, and you will also submit your reports. So before beginning looking at the application, I can't emphasize enough that you each read the guidelines in their entirety, review definitions if any terms are confusing, which are located in the guidelines, and please refer to the frequently asked questions section and its ongoing updates. We also urge you to use the help buttons for each section, and you must save work on each page before using the next button. So please be careful, and we remind you about that on each page. And finally, before using submit, each section can be viewed using the PDF link, and if necessary, edited by resuming your application before your final submission. The application is structured this way. There's an application narrative, biographies, linked to the artist's website, tour summary for venues 1 through 6, depending on how many places you are going, and the letters of intent, the tour budget summary, and work samples. So the application narrative is where you will put a lot of your content and really exhibit your individual voice and passion for this application. This is where you will talk about your residents, your artistic personnel, your description of your band or your touring history. And some of the questions include, what are the desired outcomes of the tour? How this tour impacts your career? How will new listeners be engaged? How did you determine this routing? And if you are requesting the $2,500, how are you making use of it? The tour summary section. I'm skipping over biographies and artist website and social media because that's very self-explanatory. But then moving to the tour summary template, that will include the name of venue, travel and performance dates, the location of the venue, a description of the venue type, which is again available in the guidelines, and then a variety of questions that ask what kind of ticketing structure or seating capacity or types of community engagement activities might be applicable. Finally, the most important piece here is that this is where you will upload a countersigned letter of intent for each venue. So let's take a look at this section and see again, upper top left, at this point you've traveled to current programs and applications, and you look at the column on the left-hand side, we are where it is bold, we are on tour summary venue number 1. And again, this is very clear what each section is. And you see the graph, the field that you'll be entering your information in. Notice the question marks, those are all your help buttons. And we have a lot of explanation about any of these if it's not clear. So we're almost getting to the end here. I mentioned the tour budget summary earlier, and this is where you tally your figures. So this is where you are adding your eligible artist tour expense request. You are also showing if you are requesting the up to $2,500. And obviously those will be added for a total request. And then number 4 is where you will write in or type in the presenter match, which again is a collective presenter match throughout the tour. Each of these amounts is pooled and auto-calculated through letter of intent sums. And here's a look at that section. I just wanted you to see some of this navigation. We give you a lot of instructions, and on the left column, again, we make it very clear what each of these items is and where you get the information. And now we're moving to the last application requirement, which is the work samples. We need you to provide links to 3 video and or audio samples that represent your or the band's best work and are also the most consistent with the work and band that you will tour whenever possible. And those samples and links can come from YouTube or Bandcamp or SoundCloud, Vimeo, etc. Panelists are only going to listen to 2 to 3 minute excerpts, most likely, of each link provided. So that means that you must think to cue your clips to a time that really provides the best example of this work. And we are at our last button, which is, are you ready to push the submit? When you are there, at that point, you will get a list of required questions if you have not answered them. And again, you can always go back to your PDF and return to edit before submitting. And this is what is most crucial. Once your application is submitted, it absolutely cannot be retrieved. So please take your time to make sure that you are completely comfortable with sending it in. I can't emphasize enough that this is not a 24-hour process per se. I mean, this is something that I suggest that you spend time with over phases. And if you rush to get an application in thinking that that might put you at the front of the line or etc., submitting early does not provide any advantage whatsoever. So I am completely on time, I think. I'm really excited about this. We are about to move to the Q&A section. And I am hoping that either questions have been typed along the way that Molly has helped answer, or that there are some that you'd like to type now. Go ahead and enter them into the Q&A section at the bottom of the screen. And finally, we'd like those questions to be more generalized. If you have a question that's highly individualized, we ask that you can either contact me or please contact the RAO liaisons that you met earlier in the session. So do we have any Q&A?
This is Molly. I could go ahead and share some of the questions and answers that have been going on during your presentation.
That would be great, Molly. Thank you.
Sure. Several folks have asked if school activities, particularly in K-12, such as master classes, workshops, lecdems, are eligible. They can certainly be considered as additional community engagements in a community. However, we do require that each tour stop have a public performance and be publicly accessible, whether that's free or ticketed, it doesn't matter. We had a question about whether the tours need to be fully planned by the time of the application. And this is in our FAQs, but what we recommend is to secure committed dates with the presenters you're working with whenever possible. And those tour dates are required to be contiguous. And, but however, the letter of intent, which is a way that we capture a lot of your tour information, is only that. It is not a contract, and all parties involved should know that there is no obligation and no commitment between the parties, in our mind, until funding decisions are made and you're notified. There was another question about clarifying the venue distance requirement. At least one venue on the tour must be at least 250 miles from the artist's home base. We had a question about whether international artists can be part of a tour. And quite honestly, that is a policy that we've discussed and haven't confirmed. But please bear in mind that our intention and our funding partners' intention is to create new opportunities for U.S. artists specifically. However, in the upcoming creative residencies, there might be more possibility to collaborate with an international colleague. Let me see if there are new questions that have come in. We have a question, how much in-kind match is acceptable? And I think we are looking for a combination of cash and in-kind from the collective venues, presenter partners on the tour, between 3 and 6. But I don't believe at this time that we have a dollar per dollar expectation. We have another question, does the tour need to be all together or can it be in separate months? This does not support runouts. These really are for a contiguous tour.
And I will add, Molly, there that this, generally we expect night to night, but of course, if there are 2 engagements where there's a day or 2 in between because of travel, we will be responsive to that.
Certainly, and tour expenses in terms of travel and lodging during that time period, even on a non-performance day, are allowable. We had a couple of questions about the amount and the match, and I'll just clarify that the artist fees will, the potential maximum artist fees and expenses that could be covered through this program would be $20,000, $10,000 from a grant if it's awarded, and $10,000 in expenses from the presenter's side. The additional up to $2,500 for artists' promotion and tour coordination is not subject to any matching requirement. We've been asked to address about touring within regions and if it's possible to set up tours that span multiple regions. Sarah, would you like to respond?
Oh, could you repeat that, please?
Sure. Do all tours have to be within a region or can they span multiple regions of the country?
they absolutely can span multiple regions. I wouldn't recommend trying to do something between mid-Atlantic and the West, but certainly, you know, the geography between mid-Atlantic and the South, et cetera, where it makes sense and the finances can be stretched that far, is very viable.
We have an additional question, which I'm sorry, Badi, I'm not clear on your question. Well, we're happy to stay on the line for the additional 10 minutes. Sarah, I think we might be able to just remind other folks who are ready to leave of where they can find information and make sure they get updates.
Yes, I would definitely, again, urge you to stay on the website to look at the frequently answered questions section, and any type of alert or notification, et cetera, would come to you if you have signed up on our mailing list. Again, just to reiterate, I am available to answer questions from anybody in the entire country, but my focus is on the South, and the colleagues that you met earlier in the call represent other regions. And while we're at it, I'll just mention that this program is, again, currently funded through 2022. So we will have multiple Jazz Road Tours deadlines. This is the first one. And we will be launching Jazz Road Creative Residencies in the fall. And I'll have another webinar for that program. So certainly reaching out by email to ask any of your questions. We're all available to take them.
And I am responding to some other ones. Here's some good questions. One is, see, they're coming in more quickly than I can respond. Let's see. Regarding the matching funds, if the presenters cannot match $10,000, can you apply for how much the presenters can match? Only apply. Yes, but I would recommend you have a more in-depth look at the letter of intent, because it does allow for the presenter to match not only artist expenses, but also those direct expenses related to your engagement, such as promotion, on-site operational staff, equipment rental, that type of thing. We have had a question about how the grant would be distributed. Typically, it's based on after the event when we receive a final report, although we do entertain requests for partial advance payments. Question, I'm new to Zoom. Can this meeting be accessed after today? Yes, this has been recorded and will be posted on the jazzroad.org website. Question, will an artist automatically qualify for the $2,500 in administrative fees if not granted any of the larger amounts? No, we anticipate to make this program as artist-centric and making for a healthy touring environment, is that we anticipate fully funding each request that is awarded a grant. Another question, can the entire tour take place in a region that is not in your home area? Yes, in fact, this program does not support touring in your home area. This is really designed for you to get out to new areas, and at least one of the venues must be at least 250 miles away. Are there guidelines on how to determine the dollar value of in-kind contributions? No, that's something that we would leave up to you and your presenter partners to ascertain. When an artist fills in the artist fee in the letter, Does that include the presenter's match? Again, I think if you have a more in-depth look, we only gave you a sneak peek at the letter of intent. Hopefully it's pretty self-explanatory. And we'll be adding some new resources over the next week and weeks as we field these questions and find better ways to share information back out to you. Can you state an artist's fee that is higher than what the total grant amount could be? For example, $7,000 fee for one show, but only expecting a $2,000 match from the presenter and a $2,000 match from Jazz Road, because the artist is working to get the $3,000 gap made up from a third party. That certainly is the intent, that this can provide some gap funding, particularly for small or newer jazz presenters, between what they can pay and what is your expectation of a fee. And that difference, if you were going to find that from a different source, you could include that in the income part of your budget form. Let's see, I'm scooting back to some earlier questions. I might ask you, Sarah, I think I know the answer to this, but in your words, we have a question. I know earlier you stated we are not trying to define jazz. However, I'm part of a hip hop funk / jazz group. Would you see this as qualifying?
I think definitely if jazz is a key piece to that hybrid, that you can make your case and come in for it. I think that the bigger concern is when you have genre such as smooth jazz or something that is very commercial and slick. I just don't think that that is going to fly. But certainly because there's such an interest in bridging jazz to hip hop and funk and R&B, I think that, you know, the panel's going to be very open to hearing that aesthetic.
Thanks. We had an earlier question that since composer-led ensembles are eligible, is there an expectation that the tours will only involve original music? And my response to that was no, standards or work by other artists are eligible as well as original work.
Yes.
Oh, here's a really good question. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with what in-kind means. In-kind would be the value that the cash value should the presenter partner have had to pay out for it. For example, they may have a sponsorship agreement with a local hotel, and they would put you up there, and rather than a cash exchange, that would be an in-kind exchange of the value of those rooms for that night, and that amount could go towards the presenter's match. Sarah, this is another one I'll ask you to respond to. The grant application asks for band members' names. This is an unknown quantity for many musicians, especially if people play with various lineups, and providing names will depend on availability.
That's absolutely true. I mean, there are definitely bands that are fortunate enough to have the same personnel, and that is rare. But I also think that when bands have replacement personnel, you know, multiple people sitting in the drum chair or what have you, they definitely have, you know, 3 names in mind of who they want to go to. So the ideal is to represent yourself the way you would represent yourself anywhere, and for the panel to grapple with who you list as personnel. And you can also list, you know, this would be the person, this is backup B, this is backup C, what have you. I mean, so we're flexible. We understand that that is what happens when jazz tours, and that it's very hard to get a finite personnel consistently for each date.
We've had 2 questions regarding to any limits on applications. One was, can an artist apply for multiple tours? And although we haven't codified it, we have been working under the expectation that in, for instance, this first round, an artist could be the lead applicant in one tour, only, and they could be a company member in another tour but wouldn't be the lead artist. So we have the flip side question, which is there any limit on the number of awards given, albeit indirectly, to a particular venue or presenter? For example, can 3 unique artists win awards if they all are hoping to route through a common presenter, unbeknownst to everyone except the presenter? That's an interesting question, not something that we have determined policy-wise. So Brian, we will certainly consider that. I would say that what we're really, the germ of this whole project, what is getting new music to new ears. And I think that unless it's a really solid jazz anchor presenter who is going to be involved in a number of disparate tours with different different venues and tour and partners on each of the tours, it's probably not likely that many would be funded to support a particular venue. But it's something that we'll take up as a policy question and post as soon as we make a determination.
So I am trying to keep everybody on time. It is 4 o'clock. And if we do have more questions, I will take them after the session and try to send you some emails. But I'd like to end. And I am really grateful that we had such a strong group of people with us today. Thank you so much. As I said, this is the first of many Jazz Road Tours deadlines. And we will be launching Jazz Road Creative Residencies in the fall. And so I am now going to move to my thank you slide. And we look forward to receiving your application. Please be in touch. So I'm signing off.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.